Hellyer, the former Minister of Defense of Canada, brings to the table, is a very clear understanding of how the banking system and the macroeconomic, what I call masters of the universe, the MOTUs, have really seized this issue and kept it secret, not for valid national security reasons, but they want to maintain their grip on the centralized economic system that has resulted in the current mess we're in, and that this is something that it's not that difficult to understand when you start realizing that it involves hundreds of trillions of dollars in commodities and mineral assets.
Well, I think the film Sirius makes that clear, and you had the showing in Washington. I attended it. That was the second time that I've seen it, and it was quite powerful. The more you watch that film, the more you see new aspects of that film. And I think it's very clear that that's the message, and it's very clear that that's the bottom line, and that you're willing to put not only funds but your life on the line for this, because this is what remains after we're all gone. The fact that there's some part of the earth or some part of the paradigm that's changed, that's made a difference. And the thing, Stephen, that I noticed was that they were not defensive when a lot of accusations were hurled against the United States or the United States Congress. They were not defensive at all. In fact, they said it's a national security state. Nothing gets done. We can't go that way. We can't go that route. And what they prefer to do, from what I understand, and this is, Senator Gravel too, is to go United Nations route, to maybe with the help of a small country bring this resolution to the United Nations. And the small country I think that volunteered was Uruguay. And Uruguay, I think, is on board for that, because whatever happens to us on the energy level is planetary. It's not just, this is not a United States issue.
No, it's global, and yet one of the problems, and this is something I've never really talked about publicly, and I'm a little reluctant to, but since you brought it up, the original, 12 years ago, originally the event that happened at the National Press Club was supposed to have happened in the General Assembly of the UN, and I had a commitment from Kofi Annan, the head of the UN Secretary General, who came in after Boutros Boutros-Ghali, who I had briefed on this. And unfortunately, they were threatened. And I got a call from the Secretary General's right-hand person and said, look, here is his phone number at his private residence at Sutton Place. They do want to be supportive, but it's been made very clear by some very powerful interests that if the UN were to do what you're suggesting and get behind disclosing this information, that the financing and other security arrangements and support for the United Nations would be in existential jeopardy. And I was so stunned because I had gotten a commitment, and very few people know that the Disclosure Project launch in 2001 was supposed to be at the United Nations.
Wow.
And so the reason I keep returning to this theme of we the people need to do disclosure, we the people need to make contact, we the people need to pull our resources and build an energy laboratory where we bring out these amazing sciences, is that, and perhaps I'm just getting cynical and old, I don't know, but I'm a little dubious of any large existing institution, whether it be the UN or any government, being able to accomplish this, because the powers that want to squash it are so huge and so threatening that they don't mind going to a UN Secretary General and making a directed threat. I mean, look, after I briefed Bill Clinton's CIA director, one of Bill Clinton's good friends came to my home. And you may have heard this story, Paula. And we're sitting around the dinner table with my 4 little daughters. And we're just talking. This guy was sort of a big, kind of heavy-set Democratic operative. He and his brother used to stay at the White House a lot with the president. And he said, the president and the White House are very supportive of what you're recommending in your position, your white paper. It's in my first book, Extraterrestrial Contact, The Evidence and Implications, which you can get at SiriusDisclosure.com if you want to read this briefing. And I put together a set of executive orders and actions, and this man who is very close to the president said, but I don't believe that they will do it because it's too dangerous for the president. And he says they're quite convinced that if he does this, he'll end up like Jack Kennedy. And I start laughing because this guy was kind of a big jokester. And I start laughing, ha, 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 ha. He stops me. He says, no, I'm not kidding. I said, well, don't talk about this in front of the children. So, we go, I said, let's go to the library after dinner and talk about this. And so this man told me that the elements, this covert group known as Majestic, or MJ-12 back in the Truman era, was so ruthless that the people around the president, and especially Hillary, didn't feel that the president could be protected from them. And I said, well, Kevin, what do you want me to do? And he says, well, they think you can do it. And I said, oh, well, what you're really saying is that I'm expendable. It doesn't matter if I get killed. He says, yes, that's right, you're expendable. And we had a kind of a good laugh about it. So that is a 100% true story. And so one of the things that I keep returning to, and I think people from, I hate to say the outside, but people who haven't sat with these sorts of folks in our society, very powerful people in responsible positions, who have seen how the system works against them, really are afraid. And I, this is one of the things I was trying to explain to Bassett, because he's never had meetings with people like that. And I said, look, this isn't as simple as you think. And now it isn't to say that a country couldn't bring in a resolution and there could be a certain amount of activity at the UN, but getting anything definitive done is going to be a heavy, heavy lift. And I think that heavy lift needs to come from everyone listening to this interview. They need to understand that the public officials and the people will only act when the people lead first and demand that there be action. And so that's why this is a movement activist thing rather than a top-down program, and always has been. And we knew that after... Well, I realized that in 1993 and 94. After I had made the rounds in these really senior circles, it was quite clear to me. And then, of course, I went to members of Congress between 94 and 99 with a lot of this information, current, not former, like there were last week, but the actual people who were chairman of committees and people on the Senate Intelligence Committee and people like that. And they would just go, look, this is past my pay grade. This is where we can't take this on. And I'll never forget the Honorable Paul Hellyer bringing this up to a senator up in Canada who was on their Military and National Security Committee, or whatever they call it, a chairman, who had been actually worked under him during their career. And he said, look, you're asking me to reel in a 5,000-pound whale, and I've got a 5-pound line here. I'm just a member of the Canadian Senate. And so, I know to the average person this sounds like through the looking glass, but in reality that's what happens. And this is why people need to understand that no matter what happens in what area of governmental, whether it's UN or another country, the real action is us. It's the people.
I agree with you, Steve, 100%. But if they do open this up, they don't have to go to the energy. They could go to the national security issue, or the pilot issue, or the danger to pilots, or something that's just like in grade 1 of this. Because I think the bottom line is the energy issue. If they started a dialogue, because I was approached by Mario Borghesio in November, and he was a parliamentarian with the EU. Right. What he wanted to do is just open up the cases. and
right.
say this is real, and that's grade one. That's grade one. That's not going to the graduate school of this. But I have a question for you. In 2009, Saudi Arabia invited Stanton Friedman, Nick Pope, Shakvale Mishukaku to their meeting, their economic meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia there. And why were they interested in UFOs? Why are the Arabs interested in UFOs? I was, my ears went up. I thought, whoa, this is not about UFOs. This is about economics, and that's where we are. And somebody out there is interested in this. And Stanton Friedman's first words were, UFOs are real, to a group of people that paid $5,000 to go to that.
Well, I think it's fine to say UFOs will and keep it on a teleologic, or I hate to say the word superficial level, but what the whole point that we've made in the film Sirius, which if those of you listening haven't seen it, you should get online and see it right now. The proceeds of the film go to create a new energy lab to bring out these hidden technologies that would get us off of oil. So if you care about the environment, you should care about this film. And it was, by the way, crowdfunded by all of you, and so you should go and see it. I mean, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people have seen it. It's been amazing. It was the world's largest and most successful crowdfunded, publicly funded documentary in history, and the rollout of it has been broken all records. In fact, our team is now at the Cannes Film Festival, showing it to people to break it into more and more elements of the media and society. But one of the things that I would say is that staying at the level of, well, here's the sightings, it's important, but you have to connect the dots in the same meeting to the reason for the secrecy. And here's why. I learned the hard way when I was briefing a lot of these senior officials. They go, okay, I could understand that there are these cases that are episodic and ephemeral. They kind of come and go. But could there really be anybody trying to keep this secret? To what end? And that's when you have to immediately connect the dot, which is what Paul Hellier's gotten quite good at doing, and it's been what I've been really sharing with him and others, to the technology and science part of this. Because even the folks, the day after the hearings ended, I was at a picnic with a group of CIA and NSA scientists out there near the CIA headquarters on that Saturday after the hearings at the National Press Club. And that was the big topic was, of course, this is a science and technology story, not, something that just floats across the sky, because basically, what is the energy system behind how a UFO is moving? And if they're there and if they're real, the next question is, what is the technology behind them and who's in them and why are they here and what's going on? So anyone who's intelligent immediately is going to have that as a question, and we have to be ready to provide the answers, which fortunately we have. And I think that then connects it to what I call relevancy. An ephemeral thing isn't relevant. And to most people, even that there's intelligent life out in the universe, while interesting, isn't day-to-day in their life relevant. The fact that there's a cabal of folks who I call the petro-fascists keeping the science and technology secret from us for not just, a few years, but for the better part of a century, that is news, and that is something everyone should be concerned about, because unless we move forward, we're going to end up where we're going. As everyone laughed when I said this at the National Press Club. Unless we change directions, we're likely to end up where we're headed. And we're headed for a very bad situation if we can't fix this problem. The good news is that we can fix it, and the technology and the means to do it are there. So I think that we have to do both. I think we have to provide the evidence and then connect the dots. And there's only a couple dots that have to be connected, which is what we attempt to do in this it's less than 2 hours in this film. It's sort of a portal. And what I tell people is the film Sirius is a portal for people to then study this subject further. And I think the filmmaker did a very good job at creating a really excellent film, probably the best one ever done on the subject.
Yeah, it has a lot of elements, including the being and the use of science to to examine the DNA of the being, and it has just about everything in it. It covers people